Microschools Show, your window on the global microschools movement. Whether you're a teacher with a dream to build a school of your own or a parent looking for a school that will suit your amazing kid, you're sure to be inspired by the creativity and innovation of our guests. I'm your host, Dr. Meryl Leineberger. The Microschools Show was launched to feature guests from all over the globe who have championed personalized learning for students by building a microschool of their own, as well as to spotlight some of the key players in the movement. Today, I'm speaking with Heather Martinson of Celebration Education in California. Celebration Education recognizes that every child has their own genius, and they inspire that genius by allowing each child to take the lead in their learning experiences, drawing on their innate learning tools of curiosity, exploration, and creativity. To enhance those experiences, Celebration Education provides rich learning opportunities in the form of inspiring environments, access to interesting materials, varied classes, and plentiful field trips all tied together with exciting themes. Celebration Education was started back in 2006 as a single class, and it has now grown to become a multi-location learning center, including materials and resources online. So welcome to the show, Heather.
Hi.
So I was super excited when I found out that you've been around since 2006. I think for our listeners, the microschools movement feels so new, but this is not a new thing for you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to create Celebration Education like 12 years ago? No, 14 years ago. 14 years ago?
This is our 15th year.
Well, congratulations on that, because that's not the norm. And when it comes to, we used to call this alternative education, but for now the sort of new term is microschools. It's not all that common to be around for 15 years. Tell us about how you got started.
Well, I became involved in homeschooling actually back in the 80s when my mom started homeschooling my younger siblings. And I decided at that time that I would homeschool my own children, even before my oldest was even born. So my kids were pretty much homeschooled all the way through. And of course, like anything else, it's an adventure and it's a learning experience. When I first started out, I was a little more traditional in our homeschooling methods. But as I listened to my own kids and adapted for them, then I learned a little bit more about learning, and I learned that the curriculums that are used in schools and the requirements and so forth is set up for a standard child that doesn't exist, and that I wanted more flexibility for my own children. I wanted more learning through exploring and learning through questioning and seeking their own answers. So I, then probably about 2004, I was introduced to this particular method where it's using a year-long theme and then all these different topics within the theme and integrating all the school subjects, and it really resonated with me. We were already kind of doing that for social studies in our family, but I just started doing it more with not just our family, but a few other families with us. We would meet at parks and have these experiences. But I was doing a lot, putting a lot into what I was doing. And I just kind of felt like this is something that's marketable because I'm preparing these experiences and, you know, I'm doing it for my kids and that's great, and our friends and that's great. But it's something that I can actually share with other people who would be willing to pay for. So that's why in 2006, I started Celebration Education. And like you said, it was just one class right here in our town, small town of Yucaipa, California. And then because not everyone wanted to drive to where we are, we started offering it wherever the families were. And so that's when it kind of took off, and we were having multiple locations, mostly at people's homes and parks, but then it grew from there to right now we're down to 2 for this year, one in a church in Redlands and one at a place we're leasing in Santa Ana, California. So it's been quite an experience over the years, you know, so many wonderful families that we've had the opportunity to interact with. and spend time with. It's been wonderful, actually. We've had a lot of fun.
It sounds really amazing. So what I'm hearing, the sort of core of what you've been doing is really listening to the community and offering what you had figured out how to do with your own kids, and then offering that out to other people's children as well, and then letting it grow as people need it in the directions that they needed it. I see so many people who are starting micro schools are involved in homeschooling in some way, shape, or form, or have seen it and wanted it. Maybe just want something that's a little more happens a little more often than our homeschooling co-ops tend to do. I know there's right now with the pandemic, there's so many families who feel like they're homeschooling, right? Because their
Yeah.
kids are at home and the parents are responsible for the educational, what happens educationally, getting their kids online for remote learning, or working with a hybrid model version, or whatever the version the school district's doing. But that's not really what homeschooling is. Why don't you maybe talk a little bit about, like, because I think that we haven't done this before, maybe just a teensy bit about what's the difference between parents who have their kids at home and they're learning at home right now and real homeschooling.
Okay, yeah. So distance learning is what you're referring to. Parents with where their kids are learning from home through the local public school. I differentiate that by saying that's distance learning, but homeschooling is very different. Distance learning is when you're still stuck to the type of curriculums that they use in the classroom. We're designed for crowded classrooms to literally keep all the children on the same page, whereas homeschooling can be a lot more flexible. One great thing about homeschooling is, first of all, you're working one-on-one with the kid. You don't have the classroom, and you have to acknowledge how powerful one-on-one learning is. It doesn't matter if a mom has a credential or not. If you're working straight with your child, that child is getting more attention and more help than if they were in a classroom. Especially online distance learning is such a poor way of getting an education to a child. So not only are you working one-on-one and helping that child advance as they are ready, so they're able to move forward more quickly if they're ready, but also you can be a lot more flexible. Unlike the big school system, if something's not working for your child, you can drop it in a day. You can retool and be up and running the very next day. You can change and adapt based on your individual child's needs. I just kind of think, personally, I'm not a fan of school standards. I don't think that every child should be treated the same. I think that there should be as many standards as there are children. You know your child, and you should make whatever is best for your child. You should help them advance from one step to the other, regardless of where any other children are. Just helping your child authentically, immediately, right now.
Yeah, the standards when they were started, and I can actually remember when the very first sets of standards were written. I'm sort of dating myself because I was still in the public school classroom. The idea was actually okay. Even national standards weren't a bad idea in my mind, just in the sense of everybody was agreeing that these were some things that were useful for kids to know and to be able to do. As a guide for a teacher, to give you just things to aim for in a year's time, they were useful, and for also helping you to know whether a child was progressing at a different rate than everybody else. It was also useful. This notion, though, that we've made the standard something that we measure everybody by, and that you have to meet them at a certain specific time, I think that's what's really thrown the wrench into things. So, I think what you do and what a lot of homeschooling families do is you look at the standards, and when kids have done things that meet those, you check them off. They're done. I mean, it's just, you can see that it's present and you check it off. And then, you know which way to go. And if a child hasn't met a standard, you go back and help them to, go over that material again so that they can.
Yes, you can. But personally, so many parents, when they look at the standards, it's so they can find and discover whatever the child is behind in. But like you said in the introduction, we recognize that every child has genius. And in my opinion, we should be focusing on what they're good at, not what they're bad at. Parents tend to spend so much time and money worrying and pressuring kids over their faults. When in the real world, as adults, we don't work toward our faults as much as we do our strengths. We have certain talents and skills, and that's where we go for our education and our career. So why not do the same for our kids? The things that they are naturally good at, those are the things we should be focusing on. That's where our time and money should be spent. Then as the children are working within their natural abilities, they are far better off and able to take care of these other things that they're not as good at. Those things will come. We don't need to panic and measure and hold the kids back because of the things they're not good at, but we need to propel them forward with the things that they are good at. That's what drives me. That's what drives all of that. I want the good things to come out.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you. I think when we're playing to kids' passions, they're happy, we're happy, and
Yes.
incredible things happen. So I'm
Yes.
curious, how would you describe celebration education right now? Is it a microschool, or is it a homeschool co-op, or is it sort of something else? Does it defy definition?
Well, we cater to families at homeschool, where the kids come for classes 1 to 3 days a week. But we're technically not a school, but I call ourselves a learning center, where they can just pick and choose whatever classes they want, whatever subjects they want, whatever is most delicious for them. I like to say the things they're ready for, the things that they need. So, but it's also very dynamic. We don't use textbooks and worksheets. We don't use desks and tests. We use hands-on activities that inspire the kids to want to know more, to do more, or to experience and ask questions. It's all very activity-based projects and learning activities. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
So how many, you have to, if you've got several locations and you're doing all of these different kinds of curricular pieces, I wouldn't call them that, but there's different kind of content explorations. Sure. You probably have people helping you do that. How many students, how many teachers do you have? And I know that your answer right now will probably be a little different than typical because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. So everybody's enrollments have changed for sure.
So we have 5 teachers and less than 10 students with each teacher. So it's really not a lot. And these are mixed age classes. So siblings attend together. So it's a small group. It really is.
Yeah, that small group and multi-age instruction is another one of those hallmarks of, I think you're kind of microschooling in a way, but so people know, in California, the laws are different.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about microschools, there isn't any kind of a legal definition for them. They're more it's a descriptive word to describe getting kids together for the purpose of learning in small groups, multi-aged, et cetera, student-centered, all of that. So you're providing us with another experience of another form of it because you're doing what is legally allowed in the state of California.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So what's a typical, this is going to be a weird question because, people who are running more of a school type thing, they can talk about what's a typical day. Maybe there is a typical day for celebration education, or maybe tell us something really cool that the kids are working on right now.
Well, we are thematic. So we have a theme for the whole year, and each week is a different topic inspired by the theme. And we have 5 components in the year, and each is 6 weeks long. Right now, for example, our theme for this year is called Explore. And throughout the year, we're exploring 5 different major biomes, and then the cultures and the nature and the geology and just all the different things that we can find within that biome. So for example, right now we're doing North and South Pole. We've got 6 whole weeks on the poles. And so we're talking about explorers that have been there. We're talking about, well, actually I'm saying we're talking about it. We just finished last week, but we talked about animals that live in the Arctic. We explored hot and cold temperatures and how seasons are made, and of course we ended the component with a little bit of writing letters to Santa at the North Pole. But so it's all very interactive. And so when the kids come to the class for our, what we call our workshop day, it's that topic all day, and each reading, writing, math, social studies, and science are all worked into the activities that we do for the day. That's our workshop day. Then our second day of the week is enrichment, where the kids get to come to 3 different enrichment classes in a day, and they get to choose. When we have, depending on the size of the group, we may have different classes for them to choose from, but they can choose the things that they identify with most. Then our third class of the week, if the families choose to do the third class of the week, it's where we focus on academics. It's reading, writing, and math, mostly all day. But again, it's all done without textbooks and worksheets, but it's math games and explorative writing, different types of activity-based learning, even for the 3 hours. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of good interaction between the kids.
Your website said you guys do a lot of field trips now. Probably not right now, but
well, we did one yesterday, which we actually went and visited. We went up the mountain and visited a man who is a dog sledder. We got to meet the dogs and learn some dog sled terms, and even the children got all roped up and pulled a thing around. It was just kind of a lot of fun. But yes, it was, and since it relates to the topic, the component, it was perfect. And the component with dog sled demonstration.
yeah, well, I would think that had to be really meaningful. You could read stories about dog sledding, but if you've never met a sled dog or seen a dog sled or have any idea of the mechanics, I think that it would probably have made a huge difference for your students to get that experience. And
the families loved it.
and then to actually learn that there are people who are still doing these things is a very powerful thing. I think it creates some level of agency in students that, you know, I could actually do something like this as my avocation, as my calling, as my profession someday.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what else do you want people to know about Celebration Education? Are you working online now? How are things happening for you during COVID?
Well, we actually already had an online element with our classes, but it wasn't our typical offerings. It's actually the children were meeting us online on a Minecraft server, which is great because the kids can actually build their worlds there and experience the topic of the week within the Minecraft environment. They would meet with the teacher and he would lead them through the activities. We're off for this component, but we're starting again in January. But yes, our normal classes, when everything closed down back in March, we put our normal classes back online. And most of our students from last year are still online. We've had to adapt and find new students for this year. We've got smaller groups for this year. But since I've got more lease on one of our centers, and I need to cover the cost of that, I'm actually packaging what we do to be offered to other people who want to start their own little groups, so that we can reach out beyond our own little Southern California area.
Well, you know, the pandemic pod thing is a thing, and especially in California, it's a thing. So these families getting together to help educate their kids. So I would guess, and you can tell us if it's correct, that you're getting some interest from some pods that want to put some more creative things into the work that they're doing with their kids. Because I'm not sure that this is going away, even with the new vaccine.
Seriously, our families are saying they're not coming back into a fall 2021 at this point. So, who knows?
So what else do you want us to know about Celebration Education? Anything else? Before we got started, we were having a very passionate conversation about topics. And I finally said, we should actually be recording, Heather. Having been around since 2006, you've seen a lot in this. You've seen this sort of growth and change from calling the work that homeschooling families were doing and these small schools were calling themselves alternative education to now we have this term micro school. What do you think is the real change you've seen in the last 14 years, 15 years?
Well, people's attitudes are changing. Even for example, when I started homeschooling my kids, some very loving people were telling me, "Oh, I'm sorry, so sorry you're doing that to your kids." The attitude about homeschooling, first of all, has changed so much. And that my family who were credentialed teachers were thinking I was damaging my children. Then just a few years later, she was encouraging her own daughter to homeschool her kids. So I mean, the attitude about schooling has changed an awful lot, and it continues to change. As a matter of fact, because of the pandemic, it has increased. It's starting to be exponential because families are learning that a kid sitting for 6 hours a day is not necessarily the best way for kids to learn, especially if it's in front of a computer. And people are starting to think, this is really poor education my kid is getting. I think I could do a better job. People are starting to think that and notice that their child learns better when they move, when they have the opportunity, walking back and forth in the room, something they can't do in a typical classroom. Kids need more, and families are starting to recognize that, and more families are turning to alternative or other ways of educating their children because they're finding it's more effective. They're finding that their children are happier, and I know when a child is happy, they are in a relaxed, alert state. They're ready to learn. The information that they're learning goes right into their brain a lot faster, and it's remembered for longer. So it's a lot more. I think people are. It's almost like the Wizard of Oz. The curtain is coming down. That what we thought of as education is not what it really is. It's just people's attitudes are changing, and I'm glad it is. To me, I'm really frustrated and I almost upset sometimes when I hear about these families whose children are just crying in front of their Zoom calls because they're frustrated and lost and confused and falling behind, and all these stresses are on them when they can just literally throw it all away and start and work directly with that child and what their needs are right now, and even have fun while they're doing it. Make it something that's exciting and fun and that kids look forward to, and they'll be like, "Mom, can we go get books from the library?" There's just so many better ways to get a child learning than sitting them down for 6 hours a day. I wouldn't do that to my kid, and I wouldn't do it to anyone else's.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pandemic has absolutely, just shown us what wasn't working, and it was not only not working for kids, it was not working for teachers.
Right.
Teachers were
It's
stressed
true.
out, overworked, spending their own money, not being paid what they were worth, all of the above. And the pandemic has made it even more challenging with having to juggle face-to-face, hybrid, and online. And in some cases, teachers are having to juggle those all at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
Or
Yeah.
like switching from week to week, from one to the other. So,
Right.
what I've found, and I'm guessing it sounds like you have a nice stable rhythm now. It's like some of your families are online, some of your families are face to face, and you're doing that in a very pandemic safe way. And you're not making a lot of changes. And it's safe and it's stable and the kids are happy and your staff is happy, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Yep. Not all of our staff came back, but they're the ones doing the online program, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're if you're adjusting to the needs of everybody as best you can, what else can anybody ask for?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm
Right.
curious, have you seen any other micro schools in your area that we should know about? What, part of what we're doing right now with this series is we're trying to raise awareness so that parents everywhere, teachers everywhere can see that this isn't just some isolated, it's not just something that I thought would be cool. Like in my world, my circle of friends and family hear about micro schools like all day, every day. So I think on some level, they think that this was just an idea I had. It was not. It's something that's been around for a while. It's something that's got a new term that's making it more visible. We're trying to make it more visible. So we really want people to see, hopefully we'll have hundreds of interviews and people can see that there are as many options out there as there are, different kinds of kids. So, maybe California, but maybe other places too. What have you seen that's inspiring as far as small schools go?
Well, I run the Homeschooling Southern California Facebook group. And of course, we had thousands of people join from spring to summer to fall. It's finally slowed down now, but from time to time, some of the pods that popped up, they would, if they needed more students, they would come onto our group and they would say, "Hey, we need it, certain students, certain age, we're in this location." So I don't know them personally, but I've seen quite a few that are just kind of, pop in and say that they're a micro school or a pod and looking for students. So I know it's happening for
Yeah,
sure.
you make it a point. I've talked about this in a couple places that I really do see the pods as something different than micro schools, although people are using the terms interchangeably. I think micro schools is the term to describe those of us who made a decision to do this work. Many of us made this decision to do it before the pandemic. And even if we decided to start during the pandemic, our intention is to continue beyond the pandemic. It's the pods that I think are really more of a response to the pandemic. And they'll be
Yes,
the kind of thing where people will disband those when it's safe to do so and to return to people's home schools, in person. I think, we'll see some people who will want to continue to do those things and may become a full-blown micro school, but that's kind of how I differentiate. So you've seen a lot of interest in from pods
I have.
to really make a more formal homeschooling experience for their kids.
Yeah.
Uh,
But I mean, I don't know specifically micro schools. I don't know any that were established like as you described, except for I know there's uh, uh, a Democratic school in Orange County that my friend runs. So they're
they're
fairly
all,
small.
in my book, they all fit into the micro schools movement, right? So
Sure.
I've run through this list before, but it's always a good thing for people to hear. There's the Democratic schools, there's Waldorf, there's um, uh, oh my goodness, Montessori schools, there are the free schools, there are liberated learners networks, there are Acton academies. Prenda has their micro schools in Arizona. Um, there's the Summerhill model. There are a variety of models of small schools, and that's really what I think makes them all micro schools.
Yeah.
I think that the word micro schools is more approachable for people. It's why we're, trying to raise awareness around that.
Sure.
And they are different. So the word alternative, the one that we used to use, it still is used, but I think that makes it sound a little fringe-like, and it's maybe the thing that doesn't get people excited about them.
Yeah. Some people associate the word alternative to mean like the school you go to if you're messing up in high school.
Well, and in some cases here in my state, that's what alternative schools are. They are the place where you're having issues with your behavior, um, and are not fitting in well, and you're getting some sort of alternative setting to help you try to get things together so that you aren't expelled.
Right.
And that's not what we're doing. We're providing kids who need different kinds of learning spaces, different.
All kids, I mean, okay, I can't start my rant all over again, but kids need to be doing something different than sitting for 6 hours a day. So, it amazes to me that would be considered alternative. It's right, it's natural, it's what it should be, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I've
So,
been to an alternative learning center here in my state. It's been a while ago, but um, it was a little disheartening because the school was being run in an old strip mall, which isn't a bad thing, specifically, but the executive director had his office up front where the big plate glass windows were, and then the classrooms for the students were all in the back. And there was no natural lighting, and they were just
oh,
divided spaces and with tables and not much in the rooms. And to me, it was actually worse maybe than the public
oh,
school
yeah,
setting. It was a depressing space. And yeah, the guy that was running it felt like he was doing a huge service to school districts by providing them this alternative school for their students so that they didn't have to deal with that on their own. Um, but I couldn't see where this was actually going to help students to turn that corner and to love learning in a way that would make them integrate back into their public school
I
and
have
for it.
some small schools that, like charter schools, that they're really just doing the same thing as the normal local schools are doing, except for that their teachers and their principals are more passionate about what they're doing. And that does make a difference for the kids. You know, even if a small way, even if the kids are still sitting for 6 hours a day, if the teachers and the staff are like, this is so exciting, you know, the energy is different, and it does make a difference. It's just not, to me, it's not enough.
Yeah.
You know.
Amazingly, we've hit 30 minutes already. It's always amazing to me how quickly the time goes. So I want to thank you, Heather, for joining me today. If those of you who've been listening, if you want to reach out to Heather, please visit her website. It's www.celebrationeducation.com. And thank you for listening to today's show. If you would like to be a guest on the show to talk about your microschool or to share your work in the microschools movement, please reach out to me at mara@microschoolbuilders.com to set up an interview. Until next time, be well.